Hi everyone, we're working in Figma. We're starting off with some basic drawing activities. We're going to be looking at shapes, vector networks and Boolean operations in this first session. This is what we're going to be putting together, a set of icons for future screen design, and hopefully that's going to allow us to explore those kind of drawing tools. To get started, we're going to need to open up this file which I've provided for you. So you'll be starting off obviously logged into figma.com in your kind of file browser, and we're going to import the file that I've provided for you. Mine's on my desktop in this folder. It might just take a little moment for it to bring in all this material. You can see it loading up there in the background. Should be done shortly. And there we go. So once it's loaded into your browser, you can double click on it to enter that workspace. Here we are in the Figma interface, and I've created a bit of stuff for us to get started with and to reference. And just we'll go back to these icons. This is what we're going to get moving with. To start off our work, I'm going to move from this page here, finished work, over into the work in progress page. So Figma has a pages function, and we can put different content into different pages. More about that later on, but let's just toggle over to the work in progress page, and there's nothing in here. This is a completely empty workspace. So we're drawing, we're going to need something to draw on, and most of the time we are creating content within what they call frames in Figma. And frames generally represent a screen that we're designing for, generally speaking. So let's go up to our tools up here, and we'll look at this tool, and we can see that, little pull down menu shows us the options there. Let's select frame, which is also F on the keyboard, and that allows us to click and drag on our canvas here. Also gives us a range of presets that we could use, different types of predetermined screen sizes. We'll get into making some specific designs for specific screens. At the moment, we're making just little icon drawings, and we're going to make those at 100 by 100 pixels. So we'll make frames that are 100 by 100 pixels, and hopefully we can reuse these icons across our design as we move forward. Anyway, I'm going to click and drag and make a frame, and I'm going to hold the Shift key down, and we can see there that we're our dimensions as we scroll. I'm going to just make sure it's square, but drop it at any kind of point there, and at the moment I've got a 396 square frame, and it's called frame. I'm going to firstly I'm going to zoom in, which is Command plus on the keyboard, and if I hold the space bar down, I can move around our canvas. So Command plus, minus for zooming in. Also got some zoom functions over here, and I'm going to double click on the frame name there and rename it icon 1, something like that, space 1. I might just turn myself off here, don't really need me taking up valuable space. So we've got our first frame. Now let's have a look at the properties over here. We can see where the frame is in our broader canvas, and I'll just zoom right out. You can see our canvas is pretty big. We can fit quite a bit of content on that. So I'm going to move it right to the center, 0, X and Y, not for any particular reason, but it's probably best just to be working from the center. Select it again, and I'm going to make its width 100 pixels and its height 100 pixels. And that's the size of our next thing I'm going to do is give our frame a fill colour. So currently our frame is white, but I want the background to be a kind of a blue colour that's in line with the kind of style guide of the project that we're working with. So I'm going to come over to the properties again, scroll down a little bit, come to the fill property here. We can see here that there's a colour in hexadecimal values. 6Fs represents white. I'm going to click on that colour picker and I'm going to choose a different colour. So I could enter in another hexadecimal value. I've already got some colours in this document here. So as you work and you make colours, each time you make a new colour for a specific purpose, it gets saved in these document colours here so that you can refer back to it. I'm going to use this blue, purple, and I'm going to fill that frame like so. Alright, so we've got our works, our canvas and our frame. Let's start doing some drawing, and I wonder which of our icons we should start working with. I think it's going to be just the clouds and the sun in the background. So we're going to be making some shapes. So these are our shape tool up here, and we are going to scroll through our different shape options and we'll explore these. The first time around we're going to make an ellipse, and so this kind of works very similar to other applications that you've been exploring in Design, Illustrator, XD. We're going to click and drag in our workspace and it's going to create a vector shape, and so all these shapes are vectors. If I hold shift down, it will constrain our shape to equal dimensions x and y. I'm going to let go and manipulate my my ellipse numerically. I'm going to make it 90 by 90 to start with, and I'll just put it in the center just for the hell of it, just so that I've got something that I can see what I'm doing. Now, to start with, we can change the fill. I'm going to change it to the fill color that we initially had, which is that blue. You can see it's hexadecimal code there. But this time I'm going to add a stroke. So if we go back to our properties here, currently we do not have a stroke. We're going to add one by hitting on the little by just clicking on the word there, adding a stroke. And currently it's set to black, but I'm going to change that to white. And I'm also going to change the stroke width to 2 pixels. If we click on these 3 little dots here, you can see that there's some more advanced stroke options there that we can play with, and we might look at those in a little bit. So if we go back to the finished work and have a look at what we're building here, they're actually half circles. So let's make a couple of half circles, and we'll do that using combining our shape with a Boolean operation. So back to work in progress. Now what I want to do is cut this in half by using another shape here, in this case a rectangle, and I'm going to draw out, and when it snaps right to the center there, I'm going to let go. So I've got a rectangle overlapping an ellipse. Now let's select both of those 2 objects, and we can come up here to our Boolean operations here, our Boolean groups, and we can decide on a Boolean operation. Now this works the same as it does in Illustrator, so you'll be familiar with this. And what I want to do is cut half of that circle away, so I'm going to subtract from those selections. So we'll cut what's on top from what's on the bottom there. So that's great. We've got one of our clouds, and I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller, something like that. So I'm holding shift and I'm dragging an anchor point there, and I'll let go at about that size, so something like that. Now we want 2 of those. So to make a duplicate of that, we can do that in a range of different ways. We could copy and paste from our edit function here, copy and paste. We can duplicate. We could also use keyboard shortcuts, Command C, Command V. The other thing we can do is we can drag, but we can hold the option down, very similar, the option key down, very similar to what we do in Illustrator, and we can create a duplicate just like that. And you can see that things kind of nicely snap to the pixel, so we can align things pretty well. We want a third one, I reckon, for the sun in the background. So I'm going to option click again and push this one up here, release, and we've got 3 of those shapes. Now this shape here is not in the order that I want, so I can shuffle that order a little bit. I can right click on an object and I can bring it to the front or bring it to the back, and there's some shortcuts there as well, those square bracket keys. So I'm going to send it to the back. So there's our sun in the back, but I wanted to fill, so I'm going to come over here and change that to a white fill. And we're starting to build up our little scenery here for our icon. Let's use another shape to create the kind of rays of sun, and that is going to be a line. So I'm going to select the line from our shapes there, and I'm just going to click and drag and draw a line. Alright, and I'm going to have to do that a few times, so it might be good to remember the L key so that we can go back, and because each time I draw a line, kind of deselects the line. So if you hit the L key, it brings up the line tool again. Or indeed, I could manually go back to the line key. But I'm hitting L on the keyboard, and I'm just going to draw a few of these lines. Now let's sort of style those lines. I want them to have the same visual attributes as the rest of the icon. So I'm selecting here, clicking and dragging, and also holding Shift down to select other elements, although I might have captured all of them. Yeah, I've got all my rays there. And back in the properties panel, I'm up to the down to the stroke properties, and I'm going to change that width to 2. So that it's the same width as the rest of those objects. And I'm going to change the start point and end point to a rounded end. I'll do that for both of those. So there you go, that's our first little icon. I might just make it a little smaller, holding Option and Shift, and Option will make the transformation occur from the center, and Shift will constrain. I'll just undo that and also bring your attention to the scale tool here. So we've got a move, which we've been using, in the scale tool, and that will do the same thing. We'll scale something in proportion. I'll just center that, bring that up a bit, center that in the space. Let's just have a look at what we've got happening over here in our layers palette. So this is our frame that we called icon 1, and you can see it's got a frame icon, and these are all the objects that we've put in that frame. So a bunch of lines and a bunch of shapes that have the subtract Boolean operator applied to them. We can group things, so you know, if I go and pick up this, it's sort of in parts. But if I select everything and hit Command G, or indeed right click and go group selection, I can kind of group them together just sort of for ease of workflow. And now you can see in our layers palette here, we've got a group, and then inside the group, we've got all of those layers. So we can keep everything nice and organized. And I'm going to rename this group to sun icon, something like that. Alright, so that's our first icon done. Let's move ahead and try some other shapes and some other Boolean operations as well. What about we go ahead and we make the, how are we going for time? We'll go ahead and make this light bulb. I think that'd be kind of good. Shows us some other aspects of drawing tools. I'm going to make another frame, so let's practice that. Select the frame tool and we can draw out another frame and we can give it a width of 100 and a height of 100, and we can move that frame around using the move tool, line everything up. And first thing I'm going to do is change the background color or the fill color to that bluey purple. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an ellipse like so, and I'm going to add a rectangle as well, something like that. We may as well select both of those objects and align them using our align functionality. And if we select everything, oops, oh, that looks good. We'll move it over and make sure it's in the center. I'm going to use a Boolean operation of union to tie them together as one object. Okay, so that's pretty good. Starting to look like a light bulb. But I'm going to use the corner radius property to just kind of soften off those kind of square corners and make it look a little bit more globe-like. I'm selecting the value here, and you can enter in a value if you wanted, or you can use the up and down arrows to kind of start eyeballing it. And now I've got more of a rounded kind of shape, like so. Alright, so just to tie it in stylistically with everything else, we'll change the fill color to blue, and we'll click on the stroke there and change the stroke to white and make it 2 pixels, 2 points. Alright, so another shape that we're using is the line. I've used that before. I'm just going to quickly drag a line across here and style that 2 pixels. Might want to go in close and edit that. So I'm going to drag the edges over so it's overlapping a bit better. Down the bottom here, we're going to use a rectangle just as the sort of bottom, I don't know what you call it, component of the light bulb. And I'm filling it and adding a stroke that's white, and 2 pixels, and I will also round that off a little bit. And now I'll send that to the back. Right click and send to back. So that's looking good. Another shape that we can add to our little arsenal is the star. And let's click and Option Shift, and that'll draw a star from the center. So that's looking good. I'll just change that star's fill. And there's a couple of other properties to a star that go beyond other shapes. We've got the amount of points, so I can adjust the amount of points there. And there's also this property here, which is the ratio. And this is the kind of the distance between the center of the star and the tips of each of the points. So you can play around with that. I'll just make that a little bit smaller. And center, align everything. So there's our light bulb icon, just making sure everything is aligned together. Looking good. Now I think we might make one more, and this time around we're going to be using the vector pen tool to create some vector networks. Now we can draw with a Bezier pen tool, just like we can in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and other applications. But there is some differences to the tool and the way vectors work and the way that you can manipulate vectors inside of Figma. So I'm going to make one more frame. With the frame tool, I'm going to click and drag and then fix up our coordinates here, make it a square. I'm going to align it with the rest of them. Let's just call this one icon 2 and this one icon 3. I'm going to change the fill to our blue colour and I'm going to start drawing. Now let's just go back and check which one we might draw. And I reckon we should draw this one here. I think that'd be a good example of how the vector networks work. So we're creating a little box. So first thing we're going to do is grab our pen tool and just make a point somewhere in the frame. And you can see that I've got a kind of a little indication of where the next point is going to be and the line that connects that is. And I'm going to hold shift down just so we get a nice square, and that's going to constrain it to 45. So let's click again, and that's created a point. And with shift continue, if I continue to hold shift down, you can see that it's showing me where the alignment of that next point might be. So that's really helpful. I can get things aligned. So shift, wait till it's aligned, and then I can close that off, and I've got a perfect diamond there. May as well. Let's continue drawing. The thing that's different about vectors is this idea of vector network, and so I can draw a point off any other point rather than just having a kind of a single direction for our vectors. Like in Illustrator, we can have vectors going in all sorts of different directions. So if I come to this point here and click on it, I can actually start a new vector from that point, and I'm going to click down here. So you can see the difference and kind of the interesting feature that Figma has on offer for us. So I've got shift down and I'll join it over this side here. Now if I grab the move tool, you can see that, and if I grab the move tool, you can see that our menu up here has kind of changed, because that means we've moved into the vector network editing space. And if I click done, that'll take us out of that editing space and back into our normal space. And if I do then grab the move tool, you can see that that vector is all one kind of piece. If I want to go back in there and continue editing, I think it's this icon here, edit object, takes us into that editing space, and done gets us out of that space. The other thing you can do is hit return on the keyboard. So select your vector network and hit return on the keyboard, and that will take you into that drawing workspace. So I'll grab my pen tool again, and I'm going to hold shift down. Actually, I'm going to undo that and maybe work from this point here, because it will tell me where that corner is. Awesome. Another sort of handy thing it will do is show us where the center of a vector line is. So if I click here, I've got the center, and then over here you can see it will match it up for me, and it will keep it all isometric. And I'm going to hit return and head out of that space. Now when I'm out of that space, I can manipulate this like any other object. I could scale it, I could use the scale tool itself to scale. I could grab an edge like so and scale. I'm still on the scale tool. If I go back to the pointer tool, I can grab an edge and I can deform it, and I'm going to deform that box. So it's a little bit less isometric and a little bit more in perspective, I suppose. Alright, let's just give the stroke the same characteristics as the rest of our icons, and we've created another icon. Now, just really quickly, I'm just going to duplicate that whole frame. That was Command D on the keyboard, and I'll delete that, and I'll just show you a couple of other things around the pen tool and how the pen tool works in deforming lines. So there was that icon. I'm going to start making that leaf by drawing a line, like so. And I'm going to hit escape, and that's going to allow me to start from a new point. And I'm going to draw, connect in a vector into the top of that line and make a kind of a diamond shape, like so. And I'm really just eyeballing that, and I'll connect it like that. So this is all one vector network, which is really good. While we're in this editing space, you've got this option here, which is the bend tool. So with the bend tool, I can just grab an edge and deform it, making a curve, and then we've got the option of using those handles. The other thing we can do is grab a point and drag out your Bezier handles like so. And I'll do that on this side as well. And in doing so, we can create nice curves as part of a kind of a vector network. And I'll just hit return to exit that editing space, and I've got another icon like so. Just going back to our box here, and to finish off, at times you might want to, and I do this a lot in Illustrator, is create strokes and then at various times expand them out to become fills. We can do that in Figma as well. I'm going to right click on my object there and scroll down somewhere to outline stroke. So when I outline that stroke, that now becomes just a fill, but with complicated shape. And I'm going to create one more frame, a final frame, 100 by 100, and I'm going to copy this over to here, holding Option down, dragging that over into my new frame, just so that we can see it. I'll give it a colour. And so some of those icons that I had pre-built kind of sat inside of, they were framed inside of an ellipse. So we'll do that just to finish off. I'm going to make an ellipse that is 90 by 90. Alright, and I'll center all of this stuff on the frame. Oops, like so. I'll move the ellipse to the back. And maybe that could be just a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to cut that shape out of the ellipse by selecting the subtract selection Boolean operation. And then that creates a complex shape that has some transparency. Alright, so we might finish this video here. And this is what we've created. We've started the process of putting together a suite of icons for a future app or visual identity, really. And to do that, we've used our drawing tools in Figma, shape tools. We've used our shape tools. We've used various shape tools, lines, ellipses, and also the star. There's a few other ones there that you should experiment with. We've looked at Boolean operations, cutting and subtracting and adding shapes together. And we've also looked at the concept of a vector network, which is slightly different to Illustrator, but I think has some power, and I think that you'll enjoy getting to know. Catch you soon.